Today, I'd like to resume, excuse me, where we left off on Project Soul Catcher. So we would resume on page 41. Replacing personalities and memories. I'm going to make sure I'm facing the mic. The bugs are so loud. Yes, little dog, you just are giving me your rapt attention. Thank you. This is not working out the way I planned, but we'll go for it anyway. Ow! I should turn my chair instead of my body, right? We want to be able to be heard. Oh my goodness. Horseflies. Well, we got a cure for that. We do have horses around here. Here we go. Little essential oil. Deal with buzz. Buzz of flies. All right. We left off. Page 41, replacing personalities and memories. Information streams, simulating dreams, interactive mind control, systematic overthrow. Just like with NASA's offer to build terrorist brain printing devices in airports, the reverse technology is also available. One not only can classify personality moods, but induce them into a host. This has been the thrust of much of the CIA's behavior modification experiments and splitting personalities. Ooh, Miss Tansy, hi. Oh my goodness, I've got my glasses on. Tony came by in my last stream and I thought it was you. Do you mind if I run in, get my inhaler? It's, I forget to use it. I'll be right back. But if I can breathe, I can read better. Little dog, come on. Mom has to get the medicine. Come on. Good girl. Got my medicine. Should have thought of that before starting. Oh, please, horsefly, go. Can't breathe. How are you going to talk? So I got a whole bag of stuff I have to use. That'll teach me, huh? How's everybody today? Oh, you're just awesome, girl. I know you guys have been really patient waiting on me to read again from this book. And I have to, let me breathe this in instead of breathing it out. That'd be a good start. But just had a lot of demonic garbage lately. And I don't like to bottle things up. I like to address matters and move on. All righty. One of these days, maybe I'll have my act together, huh? And I won't have to interrupt live streams with excuses. Yeah, okay. Where were we? Watch, the dog's going to want back out. I even have my glasses and I have sunlight. Where were we? Where were we? Okay, I don't remember exactly where I cut off. Anybody know? Okay, B, I don't like to kill bees, but you need to go on. Go on now. Don't like to hurt bees. All right. Okay, I might be backing up a little. This helps with the process of breaking their will and splitting their personalities. Our research team could not find any successful experiments using this particular process. Oh, I'm going to back up a little more because I'm not really sure. Do you remember? Oh, I hear you. Sorry, sweetie. I don't want. Who wants to look at my face, huh? So I'm not facing. Can you hear the mic okay? Can you give me a sound check? Are you picking up my voice? Because it was muffled in a few of the other vids. Okay. Behavior psychologists who work on creating Manchurian candidates and remote control assassins, I know I'm starting over, have used trauma-based conditioning methods in the past. Usually they choose adults and children who have been sexually or physically abused. In recent decades, they have been trying a new technique of walking well-adjusted targets back into childhood under hypnosis and inserting child abuse memories. This helps with the process of breaking their will and splitting their personalities. Now, I've read it twice. I think it's significant. Our research team could not find any successful experiments using this particular process. Governments spend enormous resources on unifying the populace. Religion has traditionally been used to unify cultures. However, a more intrusive form of unification has begun, which develops children and adult brains within a very constrictive box. Dream and thought entrainment. Brain entrainments over the population is being tested to see if they can restrict and induce a limited set of thoughts, thereby controlling popular opinion, coercing human perception to a common reality, and in essence, stealing their souls from self-determinism, without their knowing consent. Governments find it easier to govern when everyone thinks the same. Personality implantation using electromagnetic entrainments help this agenda. Think of this as a virus that copies itself to every human being, effectively taking over the natural order of society. In computers, certain segments of memory can be protected from other segments writing or reading to them without the correct permission. In this new brave world of mind monitoring and hacking, certain thoughts will cause a panic or trigger an alert for the operating system to handle. In this case, the operating system could be a big brother government. The United States and Russia are the biggest users of mind monitoring networks. Cognitive containment is an active approach to limiting the probability of certain thought patterns. For example, if a government technology down to a minimum, if a government wanted to keep, okay, so the way he's using speech to text, so the structure of this book is just blowing me away. For example, if a government wanted to keep the awareness of the existence of mind hacking technology down to a minimum, they could dampen or divert thought patterns that were leading to the understanding and rediscovery. Classical methods of discrediting government technology secrets that leak out using psychological tactics, which make the ideas appear absurd or like science fiction. Program the populace using the mass media information stream and still seems to be preferred today. Cognitive containment also includes thought and memory filters, which evolved out of the CIA program EDOM, acronym EDOM, Electronic Dissolution of Memory. Entire populations could be made to forget about Holocaust, for example. This is not an exaggeration of the capability of the current technology. Specific memories can be targeted as well as general thought patterns. For example, the propensity towards violence can be amplified or dampened in the target hosts. Now, in the most extreme, cognitive containment techniques become a mind prison. That is why this technique is listed as a malicious payload of mind viruses. The payload forces an obsessive compulsive mental focus on just a few topics, and in ever more extreme form, it is just perpetual, infinite looping and repetition of thoughts and words. This payload completely shuts down the host, be it a computer or biological. This was one of the first capabilities discovered back in the 50s and 60s. Payload B, simply by amplifying a target's brain's signals back into the same host, disables their ability to think clearly. See the chapter on the U.S. weapon system called Satan, acronym SATAN. Since the advent of computers and digital signal processing, the effect can be even more amplified by random pathway amplification of millions of stored patterns that can be triggered by template recognition techniques of the brain's bit streams. Alter personalities, i.e., split personalities, is a form of portioning a human's memory and personality banks. Let me check and see. Hello, Tina. Hi, honey. Thanks for stopping in. I felt the AI remove thought and feelings on the spot. It's, yeah, you feel a lot of things, and it really helps to have this backstory on all this. Okay, the next infinite looping. Boy, they did this to me. That was something else fighting that. Infinite looping is another form of a denial of service attack. In the psychology industry, when it occurs naturally, it is often termed brain lock, leading to obsessive compulsive disorders like washing hands, cleaning, or even anorexia. But in the induced complex, it generally exhibits a cognitive quality of paranoia and people watching them. The human virus computer program can find patterns of the mind that will loop over and over again with each stimulus with no diminishing quality. This is just one kind of attack into the human mind that creates a limiting cognitive containment signal. The average human's personality and speech patterns are far more limited than the subjective experience would be led to believe. Most people loop and say this, I think he meant to say same old things, like what he said say, would be led to believe. Most people loop and say the same things like a dementia patient of war, forgetting who they have told their life stories to. Horrific and strange obsessions can be created. For example, there is a rare example of people who have an obsession with amputating their legs or hands. They seem normal in every other way. A mind virus that locks in this brutal obsession is very feasible these days. If the brain signal can be recorded or artificially created, it can be fixed to be constantly triggered in any target brain over and over. These are just variations on the same technology that is used to create psychobombs. For example, just neuroprogramming through repetitive training sets into a target brain. The program can be anything from obedience to obsession to washing one's hands. Demons. Demon is a computer science term which means services that run in the background. In Windows operating systems, they are called services or device drivers. They are programs running in the background that can be triggered or constantly running to control other systems. In our research objective, they can be used to control emotions and personalities in humans, for example. The word demon is very appropriate given how the mythology describes demons as possessing one's mind and body. No exorcism can defeat neurological weapons. Yeah, but I sure do rebuke the operators. Anyway, crashing the operating system through error amplification. An interesting strategy for mind viruses to take control of civilizations came from HIV. If one can build a virus that attacks the most aware, most intelligent, and most likely to recognize the infection first, the virus will be more successful at dampening an immune response from the system to defend itself. Certainly, it would delay a response, at which point the infection might have already spread significantly to the point that there are no free thinkers left to respond. There is Russian literature which looks like it was written by a native English speaker that describes how they made sure that they took out the greatest thinkers in their culture first when implementing this kind of societal control strategy. The Cold War was very much a strategy of taking over governments and culture around the world. We now say these countries have puppet governments. The simplest and often accidental malicious effect of computer viruses is a destabilization of the operating system to the point of crashing it. Poorly written viruses will crash an operating system and is a symptom one should take notice of. In the world of mind hacking, crashing the operating system has a couple different meanings. One is literal, that is, through cloning an attacker's brain patterns onto a target and visual hallucinations, hypnotized states, and aggressiveness can all be used to make the target crash a car or airplane. This is a popular objective for silent assassins using the mind hacking systems. The other parallel to crashing the operating system is to destabilize either an individual mind to the point of cracking and or becoming dysfunctional. Later in this book, discussion of specific systems will reveal how they are used for this objective. For example, to create bipolar disorder in a target, the acronym ALICE, a chatterbot program, is used to amplify the emotional swings of the target. In counter-resistance techniques, this is called ego up and down, ego up and ego down, as well as Jeff and Mutt. See the chapter on the ABCs of severe interrogation techniques. At a greater scale, the objective is to destabilize a government and make it dysfunctional. The latter objective has historically been practically implemented by inciting civil wars in third world countries to destabilize them and to oust a leader not obedient to the mind hackers organization's demands. Usually, it is under the umbrella organization of the United States. Denial of service attacks. Denial of service attacks on computer systems are one of the most devastating to online businesses. A store like Amazon.com can lose millions per hour, but the worst hit is to the capital market's view of the business's security. This uncertainty often leads to billions in market valuation loss manifested by the option stock price declines. Denial of service attacks can be done to many kinds of electronics such as phones and faxes. Jamming is a form of a denial of service attack. In its simplest form, it can be done through repeated calling to a phone number, for example. The reader has already learned about reverse signaling to sensors called reverse echo techniques, ultra-wideband and cycling jammers, and adaptive jamming algorithms. But in the mind space, natural language takes on the form of jamming information from sender to recipient. The mind hacking strategy group tested the NSA system, also known as Echelon, by flooding it with keywords and knowing their triggers by piping messages through Arabic countries' networks. The MHSG, which is an acronym that stands for Mind Hacking Strategy Group, were warned by the Cyber Warfare Unit to quit effing with us. They are paying attention. This was a denial of service attack to the echelon system. The denial of service attacks are not just to cell phones, but entire areas of countries can experience satellite jamming of the radio signals from remote, from broadcasts, TVs, infrared car locks, garage doors, and alarm systems. All signals from remotes can be easily jammed or copied for total control. Traffic lights that are equipped with infrared sensors can be hacked to turn green. They look for the flashing of ambulance lights, but flashing your brights at the right timing interval will also force them to change back to green, denying the cross-traffic signal. You, the reader, will learn a lot of spy tricks in this book. Remember to use your knowledge for good and not selfish purposes. It is easier to destroy than to create. It is easy to be greedy and childlike than to look out for your fellow men and control your greed and power. Mind-hacking technology has become so popular amongst many Department of Defense divisions that each research lab has its own language and spin on the techniques. For example, the Directed Energy Directorate, operated by the Air Force, calls the mind-hacking program the Personnel Effects Program. It discusses confusion of the enemy as well as controlling all the senses from visual hallucinations to temperature and smell. They even brag about taking over the will of a person who is operating a machine and thereby controlling the machine. The U.S. That's a cute little Fiat, isn't it? Okay. They even brag about taking over the will of a person who is operating a machine and thereby controlling the machine. The U.S. Army calls their program the Zombie Project for Fearless Remote Control Soldiers. The CIA has the longest list, but started with MK Ultra mind control. Repeat, the CIA has the longest list, but started with MK Ultra mind control. Even the so-called Honorable Navy has their human experimentation of the recruits with mind control. LSD, extreme doses of electromagnetic, and experimental vaccines. Probably can't see it because the light's bad, but the effects of this kind of denial of service attack, also called a remote lobotomy by the CIA, would be identical to psychosis. Every single human being has been made to believe if you hear speech and respond to it, that person is crazy. We have all seen homeless people walking around talking to themselves. This kind of attack would precisely mimic several forms of mental illness as defined by the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. Mimicking illnesses is what this agency has invested many resources into for the purpose of discrediting. This book has no intention of diving into the political aspects of the history of its technological development, but it is a curious note that several of the CIA scientists involved in developing these hacking techniques also are listed as the first source of a couple mental illnesses accepted into the DSM manual. If you, the reader, are interested in understanding the subjective experience of these mind-hacking techniques from people who have experienced them firsthand, hundreds of first-hand encounters have been published in books. See the further recommended reading section in the back of the book to locate a few of them and better references to the history of the development of these kind of weapons. Well, that's interesting. What they like, the CIA, they like to call it a remote lobotomy. Oh. Mind hacking is far more advanced and commonly used than the average citizen might believe. The majority who have experienced an attack of this kind attribute it to an alien abduction or a haunting. Having one's neural circuitry tampered with is not an experience an average, unknowledgeable person would be able to describe in a coherent, articulate framework instead of sounding mystical, spiritual, crazy. Denial of service attacks on the human mind take many forms, and that is what this book is about. The ancillary technologies which the reader learns about are only to provide a context, a mindset, and framework for which all this came about out of a growing cultural military virus. Audio cortex distraction is one of the best denial of service attacks. It's a DOS attack. It was accidentally discovered along with the microwave oven while standing in front of a high-powered radar. It turns out that many animals and humans can hear microwaves and also be behaviorally affected by these complex intensities of the electric and magnetic forces. After all, aren't we all just electromagnetic chemical sentient beings? They passed laws that electromagnetic microwave harassment was illegal in many states like Michigan and even in UN agreements, but the US refused to sign. Let me repeat, they passed laws that electromagnetic microwave harassment was illegal in many states like Michigan and even in UN agreements, but the United States refused to sign. We have many governments, local, state, federal, and secret, with different standards and different protocols. We came from a proud heritage, but something has changed in all of us. Sensory overloading and amplification are techniques of enhanced interrogation, torture, brainwashing, programming, context switching, brain entrainments, and hypnosis. The most direct parallel to computer hacking for this technique might be a program running in a protected space in an operating system that uses thread priority changes and memory swapping or hard disk thrashing to bring the other programs to their knees. Even though the malicious program is not directly interfering with the other program's memory, they misuse the processing resources in such a way as to make the other programs run so inefficiently that the entire computer would need to be rebooted to regain processor usage. Thanks, guys. They do that. They do that, guys. They're messing with us. Triggers and triggered payloads. Viruses often wait in dormant to be triggered by a specific time or event. A computer can be infected with no symptoms until a trigger occurs that execute the malicious payload. Sleeper cells and sleeper assassins are like triggered payloads in computer viruses. CIA programs like Monarch or Sleeping Beauty hope to create dormant agents to be activated at a future time. In Manchurian candidates, altered personalities are first created in a context. Then a trigger word, phrase, image, sound, or neural communication entrainment can trigger them, like how attack dogs are trained. Hypnosis is a big part of the Pavlov conditioning method. Triggering a programmed assassin or activating a sleeper cell is equivalent to RMI, which stands for Remote Method Invocation in computer science terminology. Later, when one reads about brainwashing, they can see how these loyalty affinities are reprogrammed, turning agents of one tribe into another. Personality overlays and simulation. There is a lot of overlap between the mind hacking methods described here and the fundamental technology that drives them all. A famous Harvard behavioral scientist and professor, B.F. Skinner, leaked to a class that the CIA's personality database was stored in Colorado. The personality database should not be confused with the FBI personality programming techniques. This personality database is actually a feature set representing a raw cognitive model. Not only can NASA build terrorist brain print recognition systems, but the reverse is also true. The brain prints or personalities can be induced. The brain prints or personalities can be induced into targets. The CIA has an endless the CIA has an endless history of studying how to induce split personalities. The effects of having a personality overlay induced on a person often causes what appears to be multiple personality disorder. If the external brain signals are highly bioamplified, that personality overlay can completely take over the character of the host. Another distinction that must be understood is that there are personality overlays, simulated artificial cognitive models, usually viral, and human algorithmic cloned real human hive mind participants. Each is a variation of the same technology, and it can become confusing, which is operational both from the subjective experience of the host and from the objective mind hacking investigator's assessment. The military calls this strategic personality simulation. Roughly 7 qualities have been classified to describe general temperament and demeanor and are very linked into the emotional control centers of the brain. These roughly correlate with the genetic propensities of behavior and mood. A personality overlay changes these 7 qualities. A host can be made aggressive, demure, calm, agitated, hot-tempered, contemplative, etc. The various mixtures of the 7 qualities create new personality types experienced in the target and cloned minds. They often call the eigenvectors of personality the 7 dwarfs. In a malicious viral payload, a simulated cognitive model with a destabilizing personality program is run in the host's brain. Remember how an earthquake will shake a building to the ground only within the resonance frequency heights of the building. Analogously, a personality can be rocked by the personality overlays and pain programs to become unstable. This leads to a classification of bipolar disorder by the psychiatric profession. I've been telling people for years that these mental illnesses can be induced, and they know how to do it. It's funny, I've just got that validation. This diagnosis is merely a set of subjective assessments of symptoms, and unfortunately, unscientifically never reveals or investigates the microcosm. The microcosm would describe very different reasons why mental illness arises. Oh, you got a lot of cause. Here comes that Fiat again, FedEx. Hello, FedEx. I don't remember them having that paint job on the Fiat or whatever. Okay. Backing up again, diagnosis is merely a set of subjective assessments of symptoms and unfortunately, unscientifically never reveals or investigates the microcosm. The microcosm would describe very different reasons why mental illness arises. Cancers have many thousands of different causes, and therefore it is very unlikely that one cure can ever be found due to this fact. Overgeneralizing categories of symptoms and not differentiating the names of illnesses with vastly different causes creates further confusion and misunderstandings. Psychobombs. Don't be paranoid, honey. Want you good? Yeah, They bought. They've been busy. They brought my package from Soho today. They have 2 different drivers today with FedEx. Glad somebody's able to work. Psychobombs. Inducing mental illness or merely mimicking the symptoms of those behaviors is the objective. Read it one more time. Psychobombs. Inducing mental illness or merely mimicking the symptoms of those behaviors is the objective. Psychobombs can be turned into Manchurians or programmed assassins. They have many uses that are instrumental in social engineering and manipulation of government laws and media. So, for example, if a social engineer wanted to make guns illegal, they could trigger many psychobombs at once using guns as their weapon. The public would react to the fear-driven media stories to pass laws against guns. Psychobombs are also useful in other fear-driven tactics to have the public give up their rights to privacy. Often they are used to distract the media's focus on more pertinent and important stories. The CIA and DoD groups that program minds for these illegal clandestine operations often call themselves Satanists. There are many reasons for that other than just a cover story and confusing the target. The Satanic Bible speaks of creating scapegoats, patsies, and fall guys. Anyone who writes or speaks about these topics gets attacked by psychobombs who are led to believe that the writer or speaker is part of the conspiracy that is torturing them. This is why the names of the innocent are protected in this book. Those who are not speaking about these atrocities and should know about them are the guilty parties. And then it's got a side note number 225, interview with a government Manchurian candidate project. Roughly 9 days before they began the tortures, a man dressed in an Army Reserve uniform shouted to me from across the street on 2 occasions. I wasn't sure if he was speaking to me the first time. He yelled, "You will become a psychopath." Obviously, in hindsight, this was part of a confusion game they later called prophecy. Their behavior modification techniques are scary and impressive. They tried to make me do the unthinkable. They are running deadly war games on their own country and people, destroying countless families and economic value, all the while hiding their research in the news as some psychopath who went crazy for no reason. You have to experience it for yourself to believe it. End of quote from Government Manchurian Candidate. Destabilizing the personality using these methods creates psychobombs. These can be recognized in people that go postal. Destabilizing the personality years before a programmed assassin or psychobomb is triggered helps to create the track record used for plausible deniability. The targets of the realistic operational simulation missions on random humans usually are discredited in the news as a person with a history of the patterns set forth many decades ago, mimicking mental illness on set. It is partially true that the person has a mind virus, which causes mental illness in these experiments, but what the general public never gets to know is what causes it. There are environmental and genetic factors which can cause disease. Of course, there are natural mental defects arising from life experiences, physical wiring, and chemical imbalances, but the newsworthy ones are almost always related to mind hackers practicing their trade. The objective of creating a psychobomb is to have the host kill and destroy as much of the community and surroundings as possible with no real target. Subjectively, the subject thinks this is the only way for change and to get media attention of their message. This is a proxy method to create terrorism. Pay attention to that word proxy. Now, that's my emphasis. Terrorism is used to create change. Psychobombs usually are there to cause mayhem and random acts of mass murder. This allows the programming country not to be called sponsors of terrorism, including domestic, so as to justify more government protection and loss of freedoms. People always follow suit because security is more important than freedom. It is a fundamental algorithm and drive to protect our children and allow our species to exist. These algorithms can be utilized to gain more power and influence too. Depatterning is used to remove all meaning and hope. I'll repeat, depatterning is used to remove all meaning and hope. This is necessary for false flag operations and to create intense meaning, like how suicide bomber programmers use religion or extreme patriotism to convince their constituents. It is about erasing survival instincts. I'll repeat, it is about erasing survival instincts. The mind hacking strategy group studied how to defuse a psychobomb, or at least redirect them toward their true enemies. It is dangerous to create these humans that are about to explode because they can be used by other organizations and governments and then reprogrammed for another mission. Side note, interview with a psychobomb. Question, how did they almost make you go on a killing spree amongst young children? Answer, obviously, if they had been successful, I wouldn't be having this interview today. Their psychological techniques are impressive to say the least. Through torture, they create intense anger in that no one would help me stop the government from doing it. No one wants to get involved. Then they pipe messages into my head. Kill everyone. They don't care, and their tax dollars support this level of torture of its citizens. You shouldn't care about them. They are selfish, dumb, disgusting creatures. Things like that. They tried to convince me that if I go on a massive killing spree, that finally the news would cover my torture and people would care. Question, why did they stop torturing me? Answer, they said that I didn't create a good enough track record of seeking psychological help. Little benign neglect. Psychobombs can be used to manipulate the public in giving up their gun rights, for example. Could they be used to scare and terrorize the public so that the public is willing to move towards a police state? What other uses for psychobombs can you think of? Programmed assassins and other CIA human assets. Programmed assassins were made famous by the movie and book Manchurian Candidate. The basic idea is to make the asset get close to the target, then trigger the asset to assassinate them. One such CIA program was called Artichoke. Project Artichoke looked for subjects that were roughly 35 years old, sociable, and educated. The goal was to have the subject kill a political leader, including one in the United States if no others were identified. The size and scope was never revealed, nor the results. No one would ever agree voluntarily to prostitute themselves for an agency that does not pay them. Most people can't kill other people, even in self-defense. Creating a pathological alter personality is one of the major goals of these CIA programs. This is why mostly women are grabbed for trauma-based conditioning of split personalities. Femme fatales are more useful in the spy industry. Only a small percentage of those brutalized go on to become split personalities and further programmed. The idea is to create sociopaths that take commands but are able to traverse most social groups with ease by putting on some charm and require no payment other than the opportunity to do someone else's bidding or against their own will and knowledge. How are programmed assassins made? The conscious state is split and conditioned with emotions. During one altered, torturous state, they force visualization of the events that the programmers want done. This is like how athletes visualize their skills over and over before actually performing them. A programmed assassin is forced to visualize the assassination of their targets over and over using the different methods taught to them during their programming duration. Sleeper agents and assassins are called such because they remain in stasis, zombification, or altered state until they are to be used and triggered when needed. Terrorist sleeper cells operate in a similar manner, except they volunteered for the mission. The word terrorist is just a word formality. Many United States created programmed soldiers and assassins are used in false flag operations, marketed as terrorism by media, or sometimes they go after those that created them. The movie and book series Bourne Identity illustrates this from a Hollywood viewpoint. Side note, interview with a programmed assassin. Interviewee, they tried to make me kill several United States generals and the Ministry of Defense officials. It was like the movie Clockwork Orange, where they took a prisoner and conditioned him to shut down in the sight of violence. However, in my case, they took a good, sensitive man and tried to make him into a violent killer on command. Interviewer: who did this programming to you? Who did this programming to you? Interviewee: I know that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were behind my suffering and torture. I heard their voices. The author visited Hillary Clinton's office as a senator to see if she had any pull for a congressional investigation. Her office wasn't interested. Clearly, the CIA has used voice transformation to make this Manchurian be misdirected. The difference between psychobombs and programmed assassins is merely the selection of particular acts of destruction or people to kill. The subjective experience for the programmed assassin can be completely different in motive than that expected from normal crimes of passion. John Lennon's and President Ronald Reagan's shooters are examples of programmed assassins that had no understandable reason for their violent action. Hence, we call them insane. There have been several failed attempts in the past at creating a delusional, love-obsessed psycho-assassin by the CIA. These never make the news. In fact, these kinds of assassins seem to be more successful at following through with their mission than the artificial hate-induced directed delusion. In addition, the successful mind hack assassins seem to be unaware of the technology and what is controlling their thoughts. The mind hack projects that are told through biocommunication technology that they are government property never seem to quite be able to get triggered, although many talk about it. The Oklahoma bomber may be the exception. Programmed assassins are created by the government for a particular target to kill on a hypnotic command, and they are generally not supposed to remember the act after they commit it, using a technique to split their personalities and create disassociated alters. This allows them to pass polygraph tests and the like. The only real difference between psychotronically created terrorists and psychobombs is in the target that is selected for them. A programmed assassin has specific targets. A mind hack terrorist is pointed to a group causing their suffering, and a psychobomb has no target selected. They choose their own, which are usually neighbors, coworkers, and bosses. Psychobombs have a strong paranoid personality type played into them. All their fears and suspicions are amplified to the point of delusion, an error that turns into fact in the mind of the hacked. This is quite purposeful, and the scripts used by the mind hackers encourage these particular paranoid delusions for creating psychobombs. Similarly, the mind hacked that are turned into terrorists have head games played with them in such a way as to make them think a particular country is behind it. Many examples that have been interviewed and successfully deprogrammed have targeted Russia, China, Iraq, and Iran. These mind-hacking projects were successfully convinced that these countries were behind their wireless torture. Terrorists created by mind-hacking techniques don't differ from the usual understanding other than the means and indirection that they are created. Voice of God weapons offer an even better means to create them, in addition to just radical religious beliefs. The most famous and malicious psychotronic virus is called Satan 666. The rumors said that it was released by the Russians, but of course finger pointing is always used to redirect the disappointment of who is really responsible for the English acronym. One should easily see that Russians are atheists and would not use English acronyms and words with their creations. In addition, the Satan virus matches the capability of the United States offensive system called Satan, S-A-T-A-N. See the chapter on known United States biocommunication weapon system. Proxy agent provocateurs. Proxy agent provocateurs are used to invoke the defensive algorithms of humans or aggressive algorithms by a false leader. This creates a counterinsurgence playing into the hand of the provocateurs. With neurological mind-controlled weaponry, anyone can be used as an agent provocateur. Mind hacking is a torturous process described as a live mental vivisection. The other reason that fake classifications were made up for the DSM manual was that the Department of Defense needed a way to thwart off attacks by the thousands of human projects that may be seeking to infiltrate their organization seeking revenge. The process of getting a security clearance involves many questions surrounding mental illness symptoms. This is a way to weed out the citizens that were put through the torturous mind hacking program. Enemy combatant is a newer classification that includes any subversives to the government organizations, including targets of this kind of weapon. Whoa. Handlers, and proxies. Handlers in computer science is an indirection. Handlers are used in the NSA and CIA as an indirection to controlling the agent. They are used for many reasons, including not putting the handler manager in danger and for plausible deniability. When starting wars and disruption, proxy agent provocateurs are used. Pleasure-pain principle. We exist because the universe is dreaming. In general, when engineering intelligent systems, pleasure and reward serve as the motivator and director, while punishment and pain serve as the error-correcting function and mitigator. An intelligent system, as we humans understand it, which is durable, stable, and converges quickly, cannot be created without these concepts either in animal or artificial contexts. This is the study of cybernetics. What are we doing here? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, girls. All right, I'm right there with you. Another aspect of the technology that is not well documented or discussed is the other side of the coin. Pain is well defined and easy to create. Most of the human sensory function is to alert the brain that something is wrong. Pleasure is more abstract and complicated in the realm of brain signal inductions and far more state dependent in terms of how sensory stimuli would be interpreted as pleasure. Apathy and the lack of pain seems to be perceived as a sort of pleasure because no corrective function is needed. Addictive pathways are often described as a pleasure reward system, which can spiral out of control. They are positive feedback pathways where negative control feedback systems are no longer participating. Biocommunication technology can amplify addictive pathways, but it does not seem to amplify the perceived pleasure, according to studies of the government research projects. This is useful for silent assassinations where years are the order of magnitude of time desired for the target's early termination through amplified self-destructive urges and behaviors like smoking and alcoholism. One moment. Excuse me. Strangely, the emotion of love is not purely composed of pleasure, but it follows the patterns of addiction. So the pathways of love can be amplified to an unhealthy, obsessive level comparable in intensity to a strong drug addiction. This is the emotional mechanism used to create some of the most successfully programmed assassins. I think that's interesting about the addictive pathways. Next paragraph. Laughter can be induced during mind hacking. Excuse me, I'm going to light my cigar. Wow, laughter can be induced during mind hacking. Laughter can also be a kind of pleasure reflex, a sense of a benevolent presence has been reported in many hacked targets. All these reflexes are abstract pleasures because they produce a secure, relaxed state. But most pleasure comes from complex emotional interactions with higher order concepts, such as having a puppy lick your face or completing a difficult task well. These kinds of pleasures are difficult to capture and replay back into the same or other minds. The sensation of a wet face from the dog's tongue can be captured by the system and replayed, but without having the imagery, and believe that another conscious entity is causing the wet sensation on the cheek. The induced sensory pathway perceptions fail to create the pleasurable emotions. Another extreme example of the difficulty the current mind hacking systems have with using pleasure as a behavior modification tactic is what most creatures consider to be the most pleasurable moment of orgasm. A large number of hacked targets report experimentation with forcing orgasms, especially at inappropriate times, such as while praying in church. Instead of it feeling pleasurable, it turns out to induce the opposite feeling of being violated, simply because of the context of the induced sensations. This pleasure pathway is reduced to a negative emotional response, even though the body will go through the same convulsive reactions. How can one quantitatively measure happiness and misery? Can money buy happiness? These are age-old questions that can finally be answered by these new technologies. Defining a complex happiness index is itself a difficult task, like defining IQ. When just using a survey, money buys happiness over extreme poverty. But as the income increases over severe poverty, the happiness measurement does not. Similarly, with IQ, income potential increases up to about 130 IQ, but then falls off with IQ scores above that metric threshold on average. What is pleasure? Many have defined it as being in harmony with one's environment where no new learning needs to take place. Is happiness the same thing as pleasure? Behavior modification experiments by the CIA use these age-old principles. 1 second, my little dog's telling me to open the door. She doesn't have thumbs. Come on, sweetheart. Come on out. Good girl. You're going to get in your chair or you're going to go potty. Hey. Hey, we have an audience. You can't just take off, by the way. Come on. We have 2 write-ups from no leash. There you go. Get your chair. You can get in it, please. No, you don't want to get in the chair? Get in the chair. They can't see you. The camera can't see you. Dog's too smart for her own good. All right, Maslow's antiquated hierarchy of needs. This is interesting. Maslow's, it's a person's name, antiquated hierarchy of needs. I've got a pyramid here I'm going to put up there. I'll show you. Okay. At the uppermost, we have self-actualization. Okay, and under that, we have morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem-solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. Then we have esteem further down from the top. Self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. Then we have love and belonging, friendship, family, and sexual intimacy. Safety is the next category. Security of body, employment, resources, fertility, the family, health, and property. And then we have the physiological: breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, and excretion. Author's side note: the dark side of behavioral modification of humans is not a new science. There are modern frameworks created by Initial B, initial F, Skinner, Skinner, and initial E like Egypt, O like Ohio, Wilson, Wilson, from Harvard. But the understanding is rediscovered by every child. For example, the FBI arrested an investment banking partner who would slip a street drug called ecstasy into drinks of potential large investors in order to alter their decision-making process. The CIA had a chemical division called TSS, who was supposed to develop drugs for various purposes, such as memory blocking, ease hypnosis, and fall in love with no come down. They called their armory with drugs in the 1950s tricks with liquids and solids. Others have rediscovered the CIA's effort and used them for personal gain. One CIA director of a foreign country used the drugs for sex while videotaping his 15 discovered victims in 2008. Oh, my cigar keeps going out. Coca-Cola Company used cocaine in the early 1900s in their soft drinks to make their workers and consumers addicted and thereby work harder in a vicious loop. In Afghanistan, sweatshops get their workers addicted to opium so as to make them work harder for more of the drug. Later in the book, the reader will learn more about negative and positive feedback loops that go awry. Even positive reinforcement of behavior can be used in a negative context. Normally, people think of torture and interrogation, which uses the negative side of behavior modification. However, many sophisticated, diabolical people use the CIA's methods by putting small doses of addictive substances in fluid or even gaseous forms. The non-consensual person will become addicted to the companionship of the individual, mistaking it for love. The FBI prosecuted an investment banker for using ecstasy, a street drug, to seduce clients into investing by feeling good. Hacking the variables of belief systems. We start this section of cultural beliefs by using electronic examples to show how sensors can be purposefully misled. Then we will show how this embodies human senses and their beliefs. Ghosting the sensor systems. An example of ghosting and misleading detection systems are simple. Flares to divert missiles called angel. The same themes appear in biological sensors, i.e. blinding weapons and dazzlers. When talking about electronics and computers, ghosts are echoes of actions in a signal like one often sees in broadcast television stations. Other sensors can have ghosts from unintentional electrical crosstalk or purposeful RFI, which stands for radio frequency interference. This is the ghost in the machine. Other pieces of software that zombify or put a host machine under remote control are also sometimes called ghosts. One of the most written about capabilities that interest the military is the ability to alter a person's perceptions of their senses. This is called ghosting because false images or ghosts can be created in their minds. The spooks, which is slang for CIA agents, used haunted house scripts in the late 60s and early 70s, mostly while testing these techniques and equipment. Feelings of hot and cold, a presence, false visual images, imagined sounds with depth are all described in the Directed Energy Directorate of the Air Force's Personnel Effects Program, and all capabilities perfectly coincide with hauntings that people have experienced. Okay. It doesn't take a genius to infer the connection. Cloaking and stealth technologies. Stealth technologies are in big demand at the Pentagon, from airplanes, submarines, missiles, to personnel. A microwave cloaking device created using artificial materials called metamaterials that manipulate light in bizarre and startling ways. The cloak is made of copper rings and wires patterned onto sheets of fiberglass composite. Credit D. R. Smith, D. Schurrig, Duke University. The microwaves come in and are swept around the cloak and reconstructed on the other side while avoiding the interior region, said study team member David Smith at Duke University's Pratt School of Engineering. So it looks as if they just passed through free space. Science Daily, March 23, 2007. For the first time, physicists have devised a way to make visible light travel in the opposite direction that it normally bends when passing from one material to another, like from air through water or glass. The phenomenon is known as negative refraction and could in principle be used to construct optical microscopes for imaging things as small as molecules, and even to create cloaking devices for rendering objects invisible. Camouflage and cloaking technologies are nothing new from nature. Evolution has devised many ways to lower the visibility of species or disguising them as something else. Electronic warfare jams and ghost sensors such as radar and sonic towed arrays, like an octopus squirts black ink to avoid its predators. Iraqis used the technique of visual decoys of cardboard tanks. This is an economic war of attrition of the cost of cardboard to missiles. Bats and dolphins use active sensing techniques, and their prey lower their signature profile, like the stealth bomber and submarine designs. Evolution is intelligence at a very large time frame. Even in the spy industry, there are decoy spies. How does this relate to wireless, psychic, cybernetic warfare? How could one disguise or cloak their own brain signature? Later, one will learn about how the system Christ, CHRIST, works to read common human routines. Is it possible to continuously shapeshift the mind to avoid remote viewing of it? And I'm going to check my battery. Plus, first we can only take in so much at a time. And if this is just too drawn out, just come back and pause, play, pause, play. So I think, let me see, close this out. Let me check my battery. I've got 20%, folks. So I think this is where we will end on page 64. And then we can take it back up there. And I'm very thankful for you coming by. Okay. Thanks, girls. It was an absolute pleasure. And I'll try to be more consistent with the continuation of reading this book, because, I mean, if I, in the remark about, oh, she's reading from her bed, let's make this clear. That was the only place I could get a signal. Two, anybody that heard last, the video before this, the wildlife is so loud. One person said it sounded like, hello, hummingbird. One person said it sounded like the tinnitus they get. So if everything goes well, it takes all of my energy. Even if I don't do anything all day, I am tired within so many hours of being awake. So, but I'm going to try to be more consistent, because some people don't have this book, and I appreciate bringing it to my attention. And I'm happy to read what I can from it. Sometimes I just get really tired and have to go to bed. Have a great day or night wherever you are in the world. And I wouldn't give up. I know it sounds like I say it's hopeless. It's not that it's hopeless. What's hopeless is our state of mind of how we're dealing with it. That's what I feel hopeless about. But we're going to have to contend. We don't have an ideal situation, but we have a situation. So stay strong, stay close to your Creator, and stay close to Jesus Christ. And we might We might falter, we might feel weak, but he doesn't abandon us. Much love to everybody. Bye-bye, guys. Here I come to save the day.